Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're cutting through all the meteorological noise to give you the ultimate shortcut to what's going on with the UK's weather for mid-January 2026.
And there is a lot going on. We are deep in a transitional battleground right now.
It really feels like it. We've had that serious cold, then Storm Goretti, and now everything is shifting again.
That's absolutely right. We're moving away from that high pressure and cold air, and we're back into that, well, that very British cycle of unsettled Atlantic-driven weather.
So our mission today is threefold, really. First, we need to talk about the immediate danger, which seems to be widespread ice and frost.
Tonight, specifically.
Then that big midweek hazard, the deep low-pressure system coming in for Thursday, and all the uncertainty around it.
A lot of uncertainty. And finally, the long game, that question of the Continental Cold Block to the east. Is it ever coming back?
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the immediate change, the sources are all highlighting what's driving this return to a proper chilly feel tonight.
Right. So this atmospheric shift is being driven by what forecasters are calling a sandwich of two fronts.
A sandwich, okay.
A occluded front and a wavy frontal feature. But what you really need to know is that the occluded front is where the mild air has sort of run out of steam.
Ah, okay.
And much colder, drier air is being fed in really efficiently from the northwest, and it's just pushing everything else away to the east.
So it's like a conveyor belt for dry, cold air. We're trading that mild, wet cloud cover for clear skies.
Exactly. And of course, in January, clear skies come with an instant price tag.
Which is losing all that heat overnight.
Precisely. The consequence of those clear skies is we lose that insulating blanket of cloud, so temperatures are set to drop, markedly tonight.
Right. So we're looking at a widespread air frost then. Icy patches, maybe some fog, freezing fog in places. But the sources seem to flag one area with a particularly high-risk problem, Scotland. Why is it amplified up there?
It's a classic case of sequencing, that imperfect mix of ingredients. Parts of Scotland had quite disruptive snow before.
Right, from the last cold spell.
Exactly. Then that partially melted with the milder rain that came through. So now, with temperatures tumbling below freezing tonight, all that surface water and slush.
It's got nowhere to go.
It has nowhere to go. It's just going to refreeze solid. And that's where you get the really extensive, slippery surfaces, potential black ice. It's a real issue for the roads.
That makes perfect sense. It's that melt then freeze cycle that's always the most dangerous, isn't it? So, moving into Wednesday, how does the day shape up after that intensely cold start?
Wednesday starts crisp. It starts cold. There might be some isolated wintry showers lingering, but mainly over the higher ground in Scotland.
And for the rest of us?
For the central belt, much of England and Wales, you get a bit of a reward. Some brighter weather, some sunny spells, but it's brief.
There's always a but.
Always. That quiet, chilly period doesn't last long. Cloud and rain will start thickening from the west across Northern Ireland and then western Scotland pretty quickly in the afternoon.
And the temperatures will stay pretty chilly, even with a bit of sun.
Oh, yes. Daytime highs will be lower than Tuesday. We're talking mid-single figures, maybe 4 to 7 Celsius across most of the country. It's a short, sharp shock before the next big Atlantic system.
And that's the one causing all the debate among the forecasters.
It is. This deep area of low pressure for Thursday. The sources are all very clear that the uncertainty around its exact track and depth is, well, it's very high.
And a small shift in that track, say 50 miles north or south, that makes a huge difference to who gets the worst of it, right?
A drastic difference. It completely changes who sees the worst of the rain and who sees the worst of the wind. That's why the models have been presenting such different scenarios.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting then. What is the single biggest concern with this system, and how are the models disagreeing on that secondary threat, the wind?
The primary concern, and you can see this from the official warnings, is undoubtedly the rain.
The flood risk.
The flood risk, yeah. A Met Office rain warning is already in place for the southern counties of England and Wales, and we are talking about widespread accumulations of 40 millimeters.
40 millimeters is a lot.
It is, but in some specific spots, South Wales, parts of the southwest, it can be up to 70 millimeters.
70. And that's falling on ground that's already completely sodden from Storm Goretti and everything before it.
And that just accelerates the risk dramatically. When the ground is already saturated, it has zero capacity to absorb more. So that 70 millimeters of rain just turns instantly into runoff.
Which means surface water flooding, rivers rising.
Significant disruption. The Environment Agency alerts will be absolutely crucial to watch for this one.
Now, what about the wind? This is where the models seem to be having a bit of a squabble.
They are, and it's a great question. You see people mentioning the Canadian model, for instance.
Right.
It has a reputation for being a bit more, shall we say, aggressive on wind strength. It was forecasting gusts up to 60 miles an hour inland for this system. It's a useful sort of worst-case benchmark.
And the UK's own model, the UK view.
That's a much higher resolution model, but for shorter range, and it was suggesting something a bit milder, around 50 miles per hour inland.
And then there's the European model, the ECMWF, which is often seen as the gold standard. It was flagging a specific region, wasn't it?
It did. It projected the strongest winds would transfer across the English Channel and clip the southeast corner.
So London, East Anglia.
Potentially, yeah. Gusts nearing 60 miles per hour in Greater London. Now, the good news is the worst of it is expected overnight, so fewer people are out and about. But high winds in a city are always a big threat.
So to try and make sense of this model disagreement, the Met Office has given us these probabilistic scenarios, which are actually really helpful. Can you walk us through them?
I can. They've given us 3 paths. The most probable, which they've given a 60% chance, is the low, running across the central UK. That gives us the strong winds, 40 to 50 miles an hour inland, and that heavy rain we just talked about.
And then there are 2 less likely outcomes.
Both at 20%. The first one is if the low tracks further west.
That sounded like the most severe one for wind.
Correct. That would deliver the worst wind impacts, potentially up to 65 miles an hour inland, maybe even 80 on exposed coasts. But the other 20% chance is fascinating.
What's that one?
The low tracks further east. It's a bit less developed, still wet and windy, but it brings a twist.
Which is?
A real risk of hill snow across central England and even northeast England. So you see, a tiny shift in the track is the difference between a major flood risk in the south and accumulating snow in the Midlands.
It's incredible how sensitive it is. And by Friday, the system should finally be clearing out.
Yes, it clears, and it actually brings a temporary milder feel to the south. But the north stays close to that colder air, so you'll still have the chance of sleet and snow over the high ground there.
Now, before we look long-term, let's just quickly go back to Storm Goretti. It hit around January 8th. And it really is the perfect context for these warnings, isn't it?
It's the ideal case study. The key thing you need to take away is this. Met Office warnings are never, ever based on automatic weather thresholds. It's not as simple as 60 miles an hour means an amber warning.
It's about the impact.
It's about the impact and, crucially, the likelihood of that impact happening. Context is everything.
Right, because it's easy to see a big yellow warning on the map, and then if nothing happens where you are, you sort of dismiss it, maybe blame the forecaster.
Exactly. That's the communication challenge. Take the broad yellow warning for snow they had. The potential impacts were medium travel delays, power cuts, that sort of thing. But the probability of them happening was low. So the forecast was just flagging a possibility of disruption, not a guarantee. That's why some places just saw rain.
And then the amber warning that covered parts of Wales and the Midlands, what was different there?
The forecast snow totals were actually pretty similar, 15 to 25 centimeters. But the likelihood of those impacts occurring went up from low to medium.
The confidence was higher.
The confidence was higher, and that's why we saw those widespread actual impacts. The whole matrix is about communicating confidence, not just weather.
And that takes us to the rare, really serious red warning for wind that we saw for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly.
And that is the highest level of communication.
Yeah.
A high likelihood of high impacts. And for Goretti, that was proven right. They recorded 99-mile-an-hour gusts.
Incredible.
It led to devastating consequences. Severe damage to buildings, transport collapsing, over 43,000 power cuts. So the matrix isn't just jargon, it's a critical safety tool.
That really does ground the seriousness of the current warnings. Okay, let's talk long-term. Looking past Thursday's chaos, what's driving the weather into week 2?
It's all about the jet stream. It has become incredibly wobbly or wriggly. Yeah. Think of the jet stream like a rubber band stretched across the northern hemisphere. Now, if you hit that band hard, and the sources say there was this huge energy release from a low over the Pacific.
A storm on the other side of the world.
Exactly. That sends this massive vibration right around the rubber band.
And why should we care about that vibration here in Britain?
Because that ripple effect makes the jet stream over the Atlantic start to snake and slow down. So the low-pressure systems approach us, but instead of zipping through,
they just sort of stall.
You slow right down. And when they slow down, the rain eventually fizzles out, and you're just left with this legacy of persistent low cloud, fog, and just generally grotty conditions,
Ah, the classic British grotty weather.
especially across the eastern and central UK by this weekend.
So, connecting this to the bigger picture, that big question about the return of the cold continental block, the one sitting over Scandinavia and Russia that we've all been watching.
Absolutely. That huge mass of cold air is currently being held back by this persistent Atlantic flow. But as the jet stream gets more wobbly, it opens up these tentative possibilities.
For the cold to break out.
Well, for high pressure to build to our north and east.
Yeah.
And that is the precursor you need to start drawing in that colder continental air.
So what are the big ensemble models, the GEFS and the ECMWF? What are they suggesting for week 2 as we head towards the 23rd of January?
Both of them are starting to show signals for temperatures aloft to be below the 30-year average later in that period.
Which is significant.
It is, because it increases the risk of snow. We're talking a low to moderate risk at the moment, but it is trending upwards.
But I saw there's a bit of a conflict between the two big models. Which one is pushing the colder story harder?
The GAFS model, the American one, is noticeably more bullish, as they say. It's showing a much stronger signal for colder conditions than the European ECMWF model.
Which is usually the more reliable one.
Usually, yes. The most likely outcome, however, with about a 21% chance for the 21st, is still a chilly, mostly dry, rather grotty southeasterly flow.
So the extreme cold stays locked away for now.
For now. But it does mean that widespread nighttime air frosts could become quite common again, especially in the north, by the end of week 2.
Before we wrap up, we've got to touch on this Met Office graphic refresh that's been rolling out. I can just imagine the endless internal debates about designing a universal color scale.
It's a massive challenge. It's all about accessibility and clarity, especially when it has to work on the app, the website, and on TV.
Right.
For example, you have to avoid a rainbow scale, bright pinks, purples, oranges, because that's a nightmare for people who are colorblind.
Of course, that makes sense.
So instead, you rely on shades of light and dark. The visual cue for an extreme temperature, hot or cold, becomes the intensity of the shade, which works even in grayscale.
They've also updated the anomaly scale, haven't they, to make it clearer?
Yes. The scale that compares the forecast to the 30-year average is being updated to 2-degree increments instead of 3. It just gives you a clearer picture of whether we're a bit above average or a lot.
And my personal favorite detail? The new wind arrows for the jet stream.
It is the small things, isn't it? We're moving from the slightly blocky arrows to what the forecasters are calling more beautiful, bendy, curvy wind arrows.
I love that.
They genuinely are much easier to read, and they help you visualize that snaking, wriggly jet stream much better. So look out for those from Thursday.
Right, let's bring it all back home. The key knowledge nuggets for you right now are: tonight brings a widespread and potentially dangerous frost and ice risk.
Especially in Scotland with that melt-then-freeze cycle.
And second, the big threat on Thursday is that heavy rain and localized flooding across the south, all driven by a low-pressure track where even 50 miles makes a huge difference.
And remember, the real difference between a yellow and a red warning is all about the likelihood of an impact happening, not just the weather itself.
And finally, that wobbly jet stream is going to slow things down, leaving us with some pretty grotty, low-cloud conditions this weekend.
So in the long term, the main fight remains highly uncertain, doesn't it? That balance between the Atlantic and the cold continental block to the east.
And the current odds suggest the extreme cold is going to stay locked away, for now.
Which I suppose raises an important question. Given the models are now hinting at sub-average temperatures and increasing snow chances towards the end of January, will this current grotty weather just be the calm before the true return of winter?
Or will the Atlantic just triumph and keep that cold block firmly at bay until spring? Something to mull over as you monitor those new updated forecast graphics.